Hi, my name's Eddie Murphy, and these are my note cards. My name is Eddie Murphy, and I will be doing my refutation speech on Caleb Snicker and how I believe that politics should not be avoided in schools. So Caleb talked about some really great things in his speech, and one I really want to focus in on is that I totally agree that kids should be learning about politics on their free time. I think that there should be a healthy balance between learning about it in school but also on their free time. I think it can be really, really beneficial for them. It's kind of how teachers give us homework. They expect us to do our homework on what we're learning. So students should be expected to do the homework on politics if they want to learn about it. And I also agree that he was talking about a lot about how people are allowed to have their own opinions, and sometimes those opinions can be crazy. But I agree with him, but I think that is the beauty of the country that we live in. We get to have our opinions and we get to express them freely. In some places you cannot do that, so I think that is amazing. Now, I believe that politics should not be avoided in schools, and let me tell you why. It is a direct attack on democracy. Democracy is what people thrive on in our country. If we are telling kids that they cannot further their knowledge, further their skills and their critical thinking when it comes to politics, then that should be really alarming. I mean, in schools is where kids have an opportunity to learn about so many different topics. And if they want to learn about what is happening in our world and in our government at the moment, I think that's amazing. But it's also in our First Amendment right that we should be allowed to talk about politics in school, right? Freedom of speech. I mean, that is a major one that people like to throw out there, but it also works for being able to talk about it in schools and how it should be avoided. So, like, for example, if a student wanted to talk about politics and he got reprimanded for it, I think there should be some looking back on it, because a student should not be reprimanded for expressing that First Amendment right of freedom of speech and wanting to gain more knowledge. A student should not be in trouble for wanting to further their education. I also believe that students should be taught about politics because they can learn what is happening in our world at the moment. And my visual aid, the red is teenagers, youth who do not know what is happening in our world at the moment. And this represents the civic. So civic would be our government, the political state, and that was a big number of youth who did not actually have even a basic understanding of what was going on. So I think that's also why it should be taught in schools. Furthermore, I also believe that it should be taught in schools because kids would learn about what's going on in our government right now. They would understand that they just went through the longest government shutdown in history. So what does that mean? What does that mean for people who didn't get paid? What does that mean for people who are on Medicaid, Medicare? What does it mean for people who are on SNAP? Were they getting those SNAP benefits, right? It also, they could really understand what is going to happen, right? What is being put in place right now with this government, right? So they would understand and be taught that next July, some people's jobs are not going to be considered professional, right? So that's being a speech pathologist, teachers, social workers, certain type of nurses, their jobs will not be seen as professional. And I think that is due to politics. And I think that it is important that students are really understanding what that means, especially people in high school, because if they're wanting to go into these careers, what does that mean for pay? What does that mean for college? Because now this the Board of Education is being defunded. So what does that mean for people who rely on financial aid? I think that these are some really important things that revolve all about politics. teachers have a beautiful job of getting to teach the next generation, and who would not want a generation that doesn't know what's going on, right? We all want a generation that knows what's happening, right? So I believe that it should be taught about in schools, right? They can also learn about some events around the world, right? How the French government collapsed. I think that there are so many benefits to learning about politics from a professional, from a teacher. It doesn't have to be every teacher, but it can be a government teacher who is teaching this, or a history teacher. And that is my refutation speech. Thank you so much.